Hello, everyone. Warmest welcomes to Holy Comforter Episcopal Church and our Christian formation series for fall 2020 called Liturgy, the Work of the People. I'm Jimmy Abbott, the priest at Holy Comforter Episcopal Church, and we're doing this series as a way to take a step back during this strange time and to think about why we worship and the ways that we worship so that we have a better and clearer understanding when we come back to church fully. Now, I know some people have been coming back in person. Many folks are still online. And so this is providing us with a fertile ground for thinking about some of these issues. Just a reminder, the guiding question for this series is, why do Episcopalians do what we do when we gather on Sundays and other special days of the year in the presence of God? Now, I realize that this question is very church-oriented, but today is election day. I'm recording this on Tuesday, November 3rd, and I thought it might actually help us to think about some of the other liturgies in our life and in our world, and that maybe that will actually help us shed some light on why we do the things that we do in church. So we've talked a little bit about this in some previous sessions, but today I want to talk some more about some of the liturgies of the world and our personal liturgies and liturgies of family. And like I said, maybe that will help us have a better understanding of the things that we do in church. Now, some of the liturgies that we're going to talk about are shared liturgies across the nation. So, like I said, Election Day. Some of them will be very personal liturgies. Y'all know that I'm a big golf fan, and I make my own pimento cheese for the Masters, my own little liturgy to help me mark time to celebrate the coming of the golf tournament. And so we're going to be looking at all those and everything in between. So again, let's think about some of our national liturgies. In the upper right-hand corner where you see my face, that is an election line. You can tell that it is not a line from 2020 because people are not wearing masks and there's no social distancing. This was taken from an earlier election, but of course, I just use whatever images Google pops up and says that I can use under a Creative Commons license. But in a sense, Election Day is a liturgy. Now, think about the session that we did on time. In that session on time, we talked about how time, liturgical time, circles back upon itself. And so every time we do something again, it reminds us of all the other times we've done it in the past. Now, again, I don't know about you, but every time I vote, I think back to the first time I ever cast a ballot. I was in college and I had requested an absentee mail-in ballot because I was away at college and I had transferred my voter registration from Fort Bend County to Travis County in Austin, so I voted by mail. And it's just really interesting. Every time I now go to vote, I think about that election, and then I think about all the other times in between. And it's almost like every 4 years, and of course I'm thinking just the big presidential general elections. Every 4 years, I can almost see myself growing and changing, marking time. I think about how my family has grown, the different places I've voted as I've moved across the country. I think that Election Day is one of those liturgies for us. Down below is a picture of an inaugural parade. Of course, I marched in the 2005 inaugural parade for George W. Bush's second inaugural. It was great. It was freezing cold. Now, every time I see a parade, especially inaugural parade, I think back to my own experience with that. But I think larger as a country, we think back to some other inaugurations. I think it's hard for us to think about inauguration without thinking about, say, Lincoln's second inaugural address. I mean, oh my gosh, those words that are now engraved in stone in the Lincoln Memorial, those are just embedded in us as Americans. Or think about to President William Henry Harrison, right? The story is that he got pneumonia during his inaugural celebration and died a month into office. It's interesting how one inauguration brings up all of those other inaugurations. And of course, there's pictures of fireworks, the 4th of July, Independence Day. The very fact that we call it Independence Day is celebrating this thing in the past, and we do this big celebration, this big ritual as a country to commemorate the past, but also rededicate ourselves to independence and liberty in the future as well. It really is a liturgical moment in the life of our country. Of course, the biggest liturgy of them all, Thanksgiving. Now, if this isn't liturgy, I don't know what is. Designated food and drink on a special day, gathering with the same people to mark the passage of time, and like I said, to give thanks. That is a liturgy. Again, this is just a stock photo, so I don't know whose Thanksgiving meal is this and who drinks chocolate milk at Thanksgiving. Strange, but there it is. Now, in this series, we have talked also about trying new things. I think that Thanksgiving is one of these moments that we can see in which trying new things is really, really difficult. I mean, have you ever tried to tell your family member that you're not going to make the green bean casserole this year? It's like an insurrection breaks out. There's almost this sense that Thanksgiving has, for each of us, each of our families has crystallized. Where I think about the first time I went to Thanksgiving with Maggie, my wife's, with her family. And it was recognizable, but the traditions were just a little bit different. The food was just a little bit different. It made me think and really long for Thanksgiving with my family in the way that we did things. I just think this is a really interesting insight almost into how particular parishes even have their own liturgical customs. I'm sure this has happened to you. Or if it hasn't, I hope it will in the future. Say you are the member of one parish, you get accustomed to the way that that particular Episcopal parish does things. You go on vacation and you go to worship at the local Episcopal church, and it's familiar, right? You're using the Book of Common Prayer, you're using the hymnal, but everything is just a little bit different, and it makes you think. For me, it always makes me long for home. I think that's one way that we can look again about our liturgy and our worship during this time of pandemic. Yes, online morning prayer is familiar. Even our in-person worship services now are familiar, but they're not what we know. And I think that's part of what we're all dealing with right now is longing for that way that we are used to into our rituals, into our customs. I also want to point out that in an earlier session, I talked about how technology both helps advance liturgy and also is a mirror on how liturgy is always changing. I think during this year of pandemic, we've already heard of people setting up Zoom Thanksgiving with family across the country. Again, 10 years ago, that would not have happened. We might have written letters, we might have taken pictures and sent them to one another, maybe some rudimentary form of teleconferencing, but now it is so convenient and so robust that people are going to be sharing their Thanksgiving meals across time and space, which really just boggles my mind. So I want you to think about that too. And this goes all the way back to that first session about it in liturgy in this series, is how technology shapes and also mirrors advancements and changes in liturgy. We've also talked about rites of passage, especially baptism, and we'll get to confirmation. What else is graduation than a rite of passage? So we see, we have all of these elements, these liturgical elements, a commencement speech, the reading of the names, the tossing of the hats, the taking of the pictures. Those are rituals embedded into our society that help us mark the passage of time. And again, it brings us back to that concept of liturgical time. I know that everybody who is sitting in those stands, who watches those kids graduate, is thinking about other graduations they've watched in their lives. That's just how it happens. So these rites of passage are not necessarily things that we have introduced as Christians into the culture. Rites of passage are prevalent in every culture around the world. It's just that we have our own specific versions of those, primarily in baptism and confirmation. Oh my goodness. I would even make the contention, here's the Rose Bowl. I would make the contention that we even have liturgical spaces as a society, and that our sports stadiums are truly now liturgical spaces in which we play out the memory and the drama of years past and rededicate ourselves to the drama of the present. This is really a poignant one for me. My family grew up in the mountains, not the mountains that you're looking at right now. That's where my family grew up, and I spent a large part of my childhood there. And so when I look at the Rose Bowl, I think about all the times I watched the games on TV with my family. I think then when I went to the University of Texas and we played in this game and we marched in that parade. So this structure, this field itself is a type of liturgical space for me. I want to share with you some of my own personal liturgies. In the upper right-hand corner there with my face, you see the other pictures. Those are some of the pictures of our ancestors. I call it our All Souls Day wall. It's pictures that are important to us and to our family, my family and Maggie's family, that call us to remember times past. So we have parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, other photos that are meaningful to us and our life together in our family. Again, that is a holy day. We talked about holy days in our, I think it was our second session in this series, that these are important days in which we just note these things and that we're calling them to mind. Sort of a fun one, that's my buddy Nathan. He's my golfing buddy. Now, there's something that happens on the first tee of every golf course is you flip a tee into the air, and whoever the tee is pointing at gets the tee off first. That itself is a liturgy. It's a reenactment of something that has taken place a million times before, but also a moment in which you know that something new is beginning again, and that would be the next round of golf. And of course, there we are, dyeing Easter eggs. The funny thing about dyeing Easter eggs for me is that it's the smell that's the most important thing, right? The smell of vinegar. How many times have you used vinegar to say, like I do, clean out my coffee pot, and my mind goes immediately to Easter and to Easter eggs? I think that's another important thing for us to remember, that smells and our other senses play an important part of our liturgical life. How many times have you, say, been around a glass of wine, especially maybe a port, and thought of church? That's just how our brain works. And I think that some of these personal liturgies help us as humans create patterns in our lives. And those patterns then help us navigate the uncertain future. The future is always uncertain, and so those patterns are always an aid to us as we're moving forward in life. And as I mentioned, there are liturgies that are important to just the parish. Individual parishes have their own customs. There in the upper right-hand corner is our traditional before dinner Easter feast as a parish. it's a great time. We all get together and we have this big meal of lamb and chicken, and we just have a grand old time together. You see, the parish hall is packed. I've never been in any other church that's done that, but I think it's really a wonderful thing. But again, that's something that's particular to us. There you see is drive-through ashes on Ash Wednesday. Obviously, another thing that is just important to us at Holy Comforter. And I think that some churches, and I would say Holy Comforter too, even the way we decorate for Advent or Christmas, have these liturgical elements to them. Even when is the altar guild coming to put out everything? Like we always do it on the same Saturday or the same Sunday after church or whatever it may be. There's an element to this that it never stops. It just keeps going. But each new time we do it adds another layer to the memories. So what I invite you to do for journal question number 12 is to consider your own personal liturgies. Maybe it is going to vote in election day. Maybe it's the fireworks. Maybe it's some particular thing you do at Thanksgiving. Maybe it's something that you do in preparation for church or worship. So of all your personal liturgies, which would be the hardest to get rid of? Of all your personal liturgies, which would be the hardest to get rid of? I'm asking this question because in the year 2020, we've had to get rid of a lot of our usual liturgies and usual customs, and that has been forced upon us. So what would be the hardest thing for you to give up in one of your personal liturgies? Thank you so much for joining me for Liturgy, the Work of the People, for episode number 12, when we talk about other liturgies. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you, or any comments, or if you'd like further discussion, please send me an email or leave a comment here in the comment section on YouTube. Thank you for joining me.